The storm outside wasn't half as fierce as the one that raged inside her heart. Evelyn Hartwell, heir to the largest tech empire in the city, a woman who could make CEOs tremble with a single glance, stood by her penthouse window, staring down at the world she'd built brick by cold, heartless brick. Everyone in town had a name for her, the Ice Queen. To most, she was ruthless. To her, she was simply surviving. But that night, as rain traced slow paths down the glass, she couldn't shake the emptiness clawing through her chest. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion to melt even the coldest hearts, then make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe right now. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us keep bringing stories like this to life. That Evelyn's story began long before she was a billionaire. She had been a little girl once, bright-eyed and full of laughter, who lost her parents in a sudden car crash at 14. Left alone with nothing but her father's unfinished business empire and a boardroom full of men twice her age waiting for her to fail, she learned early that softness was a liability. By the time she was 25, she had clawed her way to the top, turning Hartwell Technologies into a global powerhouse. She smiled for the cameras, wore diamonds worth fortunes, and never once let anyone close enough to see the scars beneath the silk. The city both admired and despised her. Employees whispered about her impossible standards. Reporters waited for her next public outburst. And beneath it all, Evelyn wore her ruthlessness like armor, convinced that kindness had no place in survival. Until the day she met him. Lucas Gray wasn't a man who fit into Evelyn's world. A single father working 2 jobs to raise his 8-year-old daughter, he was a quiet soul with tired eyes and rough hands. By day, he managed deliveries for a small logistics company. By night, he cooked, cleaned, and read bedtime stories that kept his daughter, Lily, dreaming even when life gave them little to dream about. He had no money, no status, no reason to ever cross paths with the infamous Evelyn Hartwell, except for fate's strange, poetic sense of timing that it happened on a golden afternoon when the city felt almost kind. Lucas had taken on a temporary job as a personal driver for one of Hartwell's corporate events. The gig paid well, and he needed every dollar to cover Lily's medical expenses after a sudden asthma attack. He was told to pick up Miss Hartwell from her private residence and drive her to the gala downtown. He had no idea he was about to step into the orbit of a woman whose reputation could freeze blood. When she stepped into the car, wearing a crimson dress and an expression sharp enough to cut through glass, the air seemed to shift. Evelyn barely glanced at him. She was on her phone, barking orders to someone, her tone clipped and cold. Lucas drove silently, his hands steady on the wheel, while she vented about inefficiency, deadlines, and betrayal. Most drivers would have flinched under her tone, but Lucas didn't. He listened, not with fear, but with quiet patience. And at one red light, when her voice cracked just slightly under the weight of anger and exhaustion, he did something no one ever dared to do. He said softly, "Rough day?" For a moment, Evelyn froze. No one talked to her that way, not without trembling. She turned to glare at him, ready to snap, but the look on his face stopped her. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't afraid. He was just human. Something about his calmness disarmed her. She didn't reply. But when they arrived at the gala, she said, almost as an afterthought, "Be back at 10. Don't be late." He wasn't. And when she returned, tipsy from champagne and tired of pretending to be the flawless billionaire everyone adored, she found him waiting quietly outside, leaning against the car. It should have ended there. A simple job, a brief encounter, but it didn't. Over the next few weeks, Lucas was called again and again for driving assignments. Evelyn claimed it was coincidence, but deep down, she knew she requested him. There was something about his silence, his kindness, that unnerved her. He didn't try to impress her, didn't bow to her power. He spoke to her like she was a person, not a headline. Slowly, walls began to crack. One night, after a long day of failed negotiations, Evelyn received a call from her doctor. The stress, the insomnia, the overwork, it was taking a toll. She collapsed in her office. The next thing she remembered was waking up in the hospital, IVs in her arm, and Lucas sitting beside her bed, his daughter asleep in the chair next to him. He had been the one to find her when she fainted in the parking lot, the one who refused to leave her side until she was safe. When she opened her eyes, she whispered hoarsely, Why are you still here?" He simply smiled and said, "Because no one should wake up alone." That sentence shattered something deep inside her. Days turned into weeks, and Evelyn began visiting Lucas and Lily. At first, she told herself it was gratitude. Then she told herself it was curiosity. But in truth, it was the warmth she found in their tiny apartment. Laughter in the kitchen, bedtime stories, the smell of pancakes on a Sunday morning. That reminded her of everything she'd lost. Lily adored her instantly, calling her Miss Eve and showing her drawings of castles and stars. Lucas was cautious but kind, always keeping his distance out of respect. Evelyn found herself smiling more, laughing even, though she didn't know how to handle the feeling blooming in her chest. But the world wasn't kind to stories like theirs. When the media discovered Evelyn Hartwell, the billionaire ice queen, spending time with a struggling single father, the headlines exploded. The rudest billionaire's secret affair. From boardroom to bedroom. Is Evelyn Hartwell losing control? Her board threatened her position. Investors panicked. And for the first time, Evelyn felt real fear, not of losing money, but of losing them. Lucas tried to step back, insisting that she didn't need the chaos he brought into her life. "You have a world to protect," he told her one evening, his voice low, his daughter asleep inside. But Evelyn looked at him through tears and said, "You are my world now." Still, the storm hit hard. She was forced to resign temporarily, her reputation in tatters. For months, she disappeared from the public eye, while Lucas continued to work, supporting both Lily and Evelyn quietly, refusing to let her sink. He never asked for money, never demanded anything. He just stayed. And it was in those humble, quiet moments that Evelyn learned something she'd spent her entire life ignoring. Power wasn't control. It was love. When she finally returned to the city, she was different. The press waited for her to snap, to fight back, to rebuild her empire with vengeance. But she walked into the annual shareholders meeting not as the Ice Queen, but as Evelyn Hartwell, a woman who had rediscovered her humanity. She stood before the crowd and said, "For years, I thought strength meant never showing weakness. I was wrong. Real strength is kindness. It's compassion. It's love." The silence that followed was thunderous. And when she finished her speech, stepping down from the podium, she saw Lucas standing in the back of the hall with Lily holding a tiny bouquet of daisies. She smiled, for real this time, and walked straight toward them. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means more than you know. It helps us keep telling stories about hope, redemption, and love that remind us we all deserve a second chance. And before this story ends, tell us in the comments. Have you ever met someone who changed your life when you least expected it? We'd love to hear your story. Years later, people would still whisper about Evelyn Hartwell, but no longer as the rudest billionaire in town. They spoke of her as the woman who rebuilt her empire on empathy, who opened shelters for single parents, and who never missed a chance to tell her husband and daughter that kindness had saved her life. Because in the end, it wasn't the billions that made her powerful. It was the moment she met a single dad who wasn't afraid to see the human behind the armor, and the love that made her remember who she really was.